Hey everybody, happy Independence Day. And I know a lot of people are watching this worldwide and are like, hey, it's not Independence Day for us. But right out of the gate, I want to say I believe that this message is for everyone, not just Americans, and certainly not just for a certain political party. I don't care what political party you belong to. This is for everyone. At least I hope that everyone will listen to this message. It is a message promoting free speech. And I know even that is controversial nowadays, which seems silly to me, but that's the world we're living in, right? So before you unsubscribe, please hear me out. Please listen to the whole video and hear what I have to say. I really believe it's for everybody. And I think you'll go away from this video with hopefully an optimistic outlook on life and why we should support free speech, no matter who, what audience we're talking about or anything like that. Now, I want to take a hypothetical. So hear me out on this. I'm just going to paint a picture. The year is 2050, okay? And as it relates to autism, as free speech relates to autism, let's say that any talk about autism or mental differences or disabilities has been outlawed. You're not allowed to talk about it. I know that sounds weird, but just stay with me. It's gotten so bad that people have been taken away in unmarked vehicles and have been escorted off to who knows where. Now, there's rumors, again, it's illegal to talk about it, but there's rumors that these people who are being taken away, people with autism and other disorders or disabilities or differences, people are performing experiments on them or worse. They're putting them in gas chambers or, doing all kinds of unspeakable things to these people. Now, that sounds outlandish, right? Especially in our day and age where we almost tend to celebrate any kind of disorder or disability or difference. Well, as far-fetched as that sounds, if you look into history, and I would love to post images and links and things like that here on screen, but ironically, I'm afraid YouTube will censor it, right? And YouTube isn't a free speech platform. I'm aware of that. It's a private organization, so they can kind of do what they want. But having said that, I'm afraid they'll try to censor some things or at least demonetize or flag the video or something like that. But please go online and do research about what's happened in other countries in the past and how they've treated people with disabilities and disorders, how they've treated military vets who become disabled. Maybe they've lost a limb or something like that, and how they've been pushed to the fringes of society or worse. These things have happened in other countries around the world, and they can happen here if we let things get out of hand. Now, why do I say that? It all starts with free speech, right? If you can't talk, if you can't think your own thoughts, then you're not a free person. All right. And as it relates to autism, it's something, again, as you study through history, that I'm very keenly aware of how people who are marginalized and mistreated, how quickly things can go downhill. And I've seen a lot of talk lately about people wanting to ban or limit other people's speech that they disagree with. And they might call it hate speech. And the problem I have, and I'm very much against hateful speech. I don't believe people should intentionally be offensive or rude or anything like that. But the problem I have is once you open that door to banning certain speech here and there, kind of cherry picking speech, it could come back to haunt you, right? What goes around comes around. And so it might work in your favor at first, maybe. Maybe there's a group or something like that you don't agree with. You don't agree with their beliefs. You think they're terrible, horrible bigots, just the worst kind of people ever. And you think that you should, shut down their speech because their speech leads to violence and that's bad. Well, I'm sure they feel the same way about you, right? I'm sure they feel like your speech is hateful and insidious and leads to all kinds of societal ills. And that's the problem we're having. I'm seeing, at least in America, and I'm sure many other parts of the world, I'm seeing, one political party trying to limit the speech of another political party, and then in turn, that political party is trying to limit the speech of the other, and, back and forth, right? And the mudflinging continues. And I would just strongly encourage, my wife and I, we're not aligned with any political party. We're both unregistered, just so you know. I'm on the level here. I'm not trying to promote one thing over the other. But I'm very much in support of our Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights, and especially the First Amendment, because if you cannot, like I said, if you can't think your own thoughts, if you can't talk out your own thoughts, you're not free, right? That's where it all starts. And I'll leave the First Amendment here on screen so you can read it. But I very much hope that's a message for everyone worldwide. and that everyone will get on board with free speech, because I've seen what happens in other countries and how they shut down people who, are an inconvenience to the status quo. Now, I know a lot of people out there are going to be like, well, Rob, that's all well and good, but there is certain speech that's hurtful to people. Some people have even taken their lives based on what other people have said. And I get that, man. I really do. And I'm so sorry when things like that happen, when people can be so rude and cold and mean-spirited that they basically lead someone to end their existence on earth. And it's incredibly sad and incredibly heartbreaking. And I do not condone that at all. But what I will say is, while we have a choice of how to treat others, others have a choice on how to respond, right? I do believe getting offended is a choice. And I believe in the quote that says, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Okay. Now, a lot of people will be like, well, Rob, you don't know what it's like to be marginalized. You don't know what it's like to be in a small group and have the world against you, essentially. Now, with all due respect, I understand that I'm a white man, right? And how people view that and view it with this associated privileges and stuff like that. But without getting into too much detail, I do know what it's like to be marginalized. I don't know what it's like to be marginalized in every case and every situation, but understand that I am a parent of 3 autistic kids and we're in the limelight. Already I know what it's like to be marginalized and hear the worst things about me, about my wife, about my kids, and how we should end our existence here on earth because of autism. On top of that, I have a belief in Christ, and I'm a Latter-day Saint, and that's like less than 1% of the earth's population right there. And growing up, I've heard the worst things about our faith. And people tell me what I believe, even though I'm like, no, I don't believe that. But apparently you got that somewhere. Maybe you read it on the internet or your pastor told you that. I don't know. But people have said the worst things about me and my faith. And again, about autism and everything like that. So I'm a percentage of a percent. And that's not to say I'm, as far as victim points goes, that I'm in the worse off or I'm worse than other groups or anything like that. I'm just saying I know what it's like to feel marginalized and have hate speech used against me. And all I'll say to that is, as unfun and uncool as that is, I'm able to transcend it. I'm able to rise above it because my self-worth is not attached to their words. And your self-worth should not be attached to the words and opinions of others, unless you feel that there is truth to what they are saying and you want to make a course alteration in your life for the better. Okay? That is an option. Most of the time, though, if people are just spitting out vitriol and hate and stuff like that, it's not to help make you a better person. So yes, you can rise above it. I really do believe that you can rise above it. There was a saying as a kid, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you. And again, that kind of goes back to the other thing I mentioned about, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And that's a hard thing in our world now, because we teach people that you have to react and you have to respond to language that's insightful. And, people will say things like, I'm literally shaking and stuff like that. And the thing is, you don't have to respond to that. And rather than trying to shut down other people's speech, and again, I should say furthermore, I believe that if you're trying to shut down someone else's speech that you believe to be wrong, I think that is like cheating in a way, because you believe that you have to shut someone up in order to succeed. In order for your platforms to succeed, you have to shut someone down. And that isn't an equal playing field. That's saying, ooh, I don't like where this is going, so I'm going to shut them down so my values and my beliefs can rise up, right? Or at least stay where they're at. And if someone has to shut someone else up to keep their platform and their values going, I think then they probably have a weak platform, a feeble platform, right? I know there's some inconvenient truths out there. There's some misinformation out there. And there's opinions that you might feel lead to violence and other things. But again, I really, really feel strongly about, or else I wouldn't risk my channel. I wouldn't risk this video about free speech. But I promise you, if you start limiting other people's speech, it will come back to haunt you. Now, I have an analogy, and no analogy is perfect, but When I was a kid growing up, I lived in the San Bernardino Mountains in Crestline, and we had all kinds of wildlife up there, including mountain lions and black bears and stuff like that. We also had raccoons, and we weren't being the smartest as a family growing up. You know, they say don't feed the wildlife, and there's a reason they say don't feed the wildlife. We had this little raccoon show up to our door. We heard a little noise outside, and this, cute little raccoon was looking for food and all this stuff. And we're like, well, maybe we can give him an egg. What would it hurt? We'll just give him one little egg. So we set out this egg, and the little raccoon, kind of slowly, cautiously scurried up and was like, are you sure? Okay. Took the egg and then just kind of ran into the shadows. Well, next night rolls around and we hear a little scratching at the door. Now this raccoon is back, but this time a little bit bolder, right? This raccoon's like, holding out its little cute paws, like, hey, you got something for me? I'm like, oh, what a smart little critter, It's holding out its paws. It's asking for more. Okay, so we grab another egg and give it to him, and then it scurries off. Next night rolls around, and we hear scratching at the door. And we're like, oh boy, here we go, right? Well, it's just one raccoon, not a big deal. We open the door, and there's a couple of raccoons there. Is it a mommy and a daddy? I don't know, but 2 raccoons are asking for food. Okay, that's not a big deal. Maybe they're feeding their family or something like that, right? So here's a little more food. Long story short, a couple nights roll by, scratch, open the door, and there's like a baker's dozen raccoons out there, right? There's a whole gang of raccoons looking for food, and they're not going to leave until they get their food. It's interesting how demanding any animal life on planet can get, right? Once they get something for free, they just want more. Give me more, and to the point where they get demanding of it. And the reason I share this analogy is because I feel like a lot of governments in this world are like that. You give them a little bit of freedom, and at first it's like, oh, I could do without that. It's not a big deal, it's not really hurting anybody. And then a little more, and before you know it, you got a bunch of people showing up on your doorstep asking for freedom, right? Give me more. And soon you're like, well, I don't have enough for me and my family. And then you want more? I can't give you that. And I know it's not a perfect analogy, guys. I know there's good people in government. I'm just saying that it's a lot like that with free speech. You keep giving it up, and pretty soon it'll come back to haunt you, and you'll realize that you don't have what you were trying to take away from others. And so there's a lot more I could say regarding that. Oh, there is one thing I did want to mention. I do think it's ironic that a lot of people will try to shut down others' free speech by writing why we need to ban their free speech, right? You're using your free speech to try to take away others' free speech. I hope you realize the irony in that. But anyway, I do just want to say I love all of you, genuinely, regardless of your background or whatever your beliefs are. I do believe that we're all God's children. You might not believe that, but I do. And as such, I think we all need to have our voices, intact, if nothing else. We need to be able to say what we want to say. And I believe that's a very American value, and it should be a worldwide value, honestly. I don't see why not, right? Everyone wants to have their opinions validated. And if not, they could just have their opinions, period, even if they aren't validated. And so I hope you understand that I give this video in respect and in love. And I'm just trying to help promote a value that without it, this channel would not exist, right? It just wouldn't exist. And I want to speak up for my kids, and I don't want to see a future where we repeat history and do horrible atrocities to people who really can't speak for themselves, especially people who are nonverbal, for example, and who need a voice. And without free speech, they don't have a voice. And I know that sounds very obvious, but that's the world we're living in now, where people are talking about limiting other people's voices and shutting down their speech. And to me, that's a huge red flag. I get that there's people you want to go away. And I'm sure if we sat in a room and you got to know me a little bit, I'm sure that eventually we would disagree on certain things and be like, well, I don't like what that person's saying and stuff. But I still believe, even if I disagree with you, that you should have the right to have those opinions and beliefs and express them if you want to. And if I don't like them, I can express my beliefs and opinions, and may the best man or woman win, right? So with that, you guys, I'm going to close out the video and just wish you a happy 4th, a happy Independence Day. And I hope you didn't unsubscribe or think that this was a political video, because I think everyone in the world should have free speech. And I think I've said that like 100 times now. And so with that, we will see you in the next video.